I'd pull out my eyelashes. Eyebrows and eyelashes here. Reading through all of these responses makes me realize how messed up I really am. Your response makes me realize that I do it out of nervousness. Eating too fast. I remember noticing this even as a child still. I was always done first. And I never outgrew it. Neglect and abandonment issues. I do this too and I don't really know why. People comment on it all the time but I don't really know how to stop doing it. As soon as I start eating it's like a blackout or something and I don't come back to reality until the food is gone. I learned to lie rather convincingly. I was petrified of getting in trouble for the smallest things that I learned to hide quite a bit. I had such high anxiety as a kid. One of the neighbor's kids constantly lies. Well, sort of. I started doing some behind-the-scenes groundwork and figured out she tells compounded white lies that unravel on her constantly. I'm assuming completely because lying is her life raft. Many people have written her off as a pathological liar. Anyway, she moved out of home, 16, and now doesn't have bags under her eyes and she actually looks like she has a healthy amount of muscle, fat, whereas before she was stick-thin. Her mom makes out that she's not doing that well out of home but she seems happier and has more constructive conversations. IDK about you but something's up when ya kid ditches you that young. Cleaning or doing things behind the scenes for my family so they're always happy. Life goes smoothly and my life is serene. The latter isn't the case unfortunately. I'm exhausted and always on edge. My house is spotless. Everyone is surprised my house is so clean when I have 3 kids ages 2 months, 4 and 5. It's totally a coping mechanism. If I'm upset or stressed I clean and with a baby I'm stressed a lot. Comes from my dad throwing epic fits if the house wasn't clean and tidy. He would yell that he has 4 daughters so why aren't things clean? I thought if the house is clean it's one less thing to be yelled at about. I'm slowly learning that it's okay to leave dishes in the sink or an unmade bed. Mess still makes me extremely anxious but I'm doing my best not to pass it on to my kids. Hiding in the closet. Started doing that within the last year because of PTSD. Turns out only reason I didn't when I was younger was because we didn't have a closet. Saying I am sorry all the time. Yes, and when someone says you don't have to say sorry and or gets mad at you for saying sorry you get in a loop for saying sorry for saying sorry for saying sorry for saying sorry. Nowadays it's a lot better than it was. But whenever I feel bad I just keep repeating it. Edit to add. Thanks for the many replies and the wholesome thread we created. I'm so happy to see that a lot of you ask and give advice and help support each other. I saw a lot of helpful tips, not only for people who say sorry all the time but also the people that have friends, partners etc. that do this. Thanks again everyone. Tulip. I try to react as much as possible. You're the best. I can't have an aspiration or a dream because I don't want to disappoint myself. Like, I can't even say that I am gonna get a good grade on a specific subject out loud. 'Cause I am scared I will disappoint myself. Same thing with other things in life. When I apply for a specific college I will just do it and ignore it until I get a result, because I don't want to get my hopes up and end up not getting accepted. I can't even have a New Year's resolution cause somehow I think I would fail and I would rather already expect that than get my hopes up and fail. I am scared of being disappointed in myself. Thank you for putting into words what I've been through my whole life. Blocking out all background noise to avoid emotional damage from whatever's going on. I know that. It's like flipping a switch. It's most noticeable to myself when I'm watching a movie and a scene comes on that triggers some kind of memory and so you mentally switch from being in tune with the movie to staring at the box on the wall while the pictures on it move. Completely removes all emotion. Disassociation and maladaptive daydreaming. I just learned that's an actual thing with a name. Learning about disassociation is a game changer. It's so hard to explain what you feel when it's happening. Being able to see other people try to explain it helps understand it and not feel so broken. Listening for the smallest sounds. Before I was old enough and had enough money to move out. When I was a teen I could hear the faint sound of the garage door opening because it would always squeak when it opens, and then I would bolt upstairs to my room because the garage opening meant that my mom was home. I can distinguish her footsteps easily. I developed a hypersensitivity to sound because of her. I keep track of where people are in the house. Since you can usually distinguish who is walking by how they sound, you can easily tell where they are. I still do it to this day even when it isn't necessary. The sound of my mom or dad walking down the stairs always made my blood pressure spike. It was my only warning that they may open my door because they were really bad about not knocking, and that meant they were pissed or wanted something. Unfortunately, they could also be walking downstairs for laundry or something else. So I would get worked up for no reason. Having 3 or 4 different responses ready for every conversation in advance just to prepare for what might come. My therapist told me this isn't as normal as I thought it was, and apparently other people don't prepare this much for regular, everyday conversations. Update. Wow, this really blew up. Thanks, Internet strangers, for the prizes. My next appointment I'm going to tell my therapist that 16,000 Internet strangers do the same thing, so maybe it is a little bit normal. Or shutting down because you have to work out the perfect response in real time. And no, screaming at me for being quiet will not make this process go any faster or help to resolve the mind-numbing panic that triggered it in the first place. Assuming people are mad at me based on their vocal tone. Overanalyzing. Jute like me. Welcome to the club. Trying to think, mentally prepare myself for every possible horrible thing that could happen to me, so that if it did, I wouldn't be blindsided. It didn't work. I want to add that my mother died in a freak accident when I was a boy and I was blindsided. My coping mechanism was to prepare for situations where a friend or family member is killed out of the blue, etc., so I wouldn't be caught off guard again. It caused me severe stress and the inability to relax ever. I am older now and therapy has done wonders for me. I tried that. Still do it to some extent. But it almost got bad enough that I almost drove myself crazy thinking about every single possible thing. Shutting down when faced with confrontation. Oh yeah, that's a big one. I have the uncontrollable urge to run away and my head goes all fuzzy and I lose my words. So weird. Shutting down emotional responses and forcing myself to not care about any perceived loss. Apparently it made it pretty annoying to discipline me because I would suddenly stop caring about anything that was threatened to be taken away. Nobody really taught me how to properly cope with loss when it started happening, and I guess my response was emotional repression. My dad got around this by going after things that weren't mine. I started hiding library books under my mattress after he tore one up and the school threatened to revoke lending privileges. Oh man, where do I start? Automatic tears when anyone of authority makes me feel small, feeling embarrassed, uncomfortable crying in front of others, not being able to confide in anyone due to risk of being judged, completely shutting down when I feel someone is angry at me, fight or flight response to any kind of conflict, constant need to please people, crippling fear of failing. Most of this sounds like me. I freeze instead of fight or flight, though. I would be interested to hear what experiences you had that led to this. Constantly daydreaming about a better life that I actually didn't have the ability to attain. I thought I was the only one who did this. Also daydreaming about people who treated me bad, suffering and I overcome in some amazing or grandiose way. Dunno if it was a coping mechanism so much as a survival tactic. I walk on the balls, toes of my feet all the time. If I'm barefooted, my heels never touch the ground unless I'm standing still. Quietness was the objective. Edit. Thank you all for the awards. My notifications have blown up, so it won't let me scroll enough to thank everybody personally, it just freezes. If we are all so quiet, how are there so many people that just stomp around? I do this too, and terrified coworkers when I materialized behind them like a ghost at the copy machine or cafe counter. They called me the ghost. and I laughed along, but kept to myself that I also knew where the exits were and what was between them and myself at any given moment. Both of my parents had terrible tempers and 3 out of my 4 grandparents were abusive. Of every kind you could name, people. You are absolutely right to call it a survival tactic. Not doing anything till the last minute, so I feel pressured to do it, and when I finish doing it I feel useful. Gotta be careful with this one because it's a stone's throw away from. It doesn't matter anyway. Constantly trying to preempt or diffuse situations. Always checking the mood of the room. Pretending laughter to lighten up my parents' interactions. Edit. Diffuse. Having to laugh and smile every time you make a comment to your parents so they don't immediately start getting offended over everything you say. It's exhausting. Apparently I do something called disassociating, where I get so deep in thought that I don't hear anything else around me. Drives my wife nuts. Also, just found out I have binge eating disorder. I eat in secret sometimes and overeat. Comes from my childhood and not knowing where my next meal would come from. On my way to resolving both. Crossed fingers. Greater than on my way to resolving both. Crossed fingers. Good for you. And good luck, you can do it. Maladaptive daydreaming. Much to my surprise, at 29, I discovered that most people can't escape into their minds and go on adventures with full storylines, world building, characters, etc. Same here. I started doing it in elementary school due to severe social anxiety and understimulation, and feeling trapped in a place I didn't want to be in. Only found out around the end of last year, at the age of 22, that it wasn't normal. I don't think mine are as intense as some others, but sometimes it's so vivid I start acting it out IRL without noticing that I am, such as making faces, gestures, and mumbling dialogue. Doing it is literally the only way I can sleep some nights. Looking for signs, such as micro-expressions, about what kind of a mood the other one is in. My therapist told me not all people do this, and I do it a lot. He also told me I developed it because I was always on the lookout on the mood of my often angry, drunken stepdad. I feel like I am extremely aware of others' emotions, or at least more than other people. Mine was food hoarding. I'd sneak food and water into my room for when I had none. Only realized this year that most people don't have stashes of food hidden around the place. Extremely interesting question you have here, Op. May I ask, do you know why? Which led you to your habit? Binge eating. My mom is a chef and so is my brother, so the food was always good, but then living on my own I found myself making meals for 2 to 3 people but eating it all, then snacks. I think it was also the, you have to finish your plate, deal too. Finish your plate. Plus my mom grew up super poor and one of 6, where they'd scramble to finish their slice of pizza as fast as possible so they could get the one leftover slice. When she had kids, that meant, since she could provide for us and never learned proper portion control, we were always given huge portions and expected to finish. It took a long time to realize A, I don't need to take, and then finish, all the food, and B, it's okay and better for you to stop eating when you're full. I still struggle with them.